Are you looking to become a better real estate investor? Then hang on, because you're about to experience another episode of the world's most popular real estate podcast, the BiggerPockets Podcast. But before we get to this week's show, I wanted to invite you to become part of our community, BiggerPockets.com, the real estate investing social network. The membership is free, and you'll instantly gain access to networking opportunities, educational content, investor tools, and more. Sign up now and get a free copy of our book, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing, read by hundreds of thousands of budding entrepreneurs. Just click this link right here or just head to BiggerPockets.com. With that, let's get to the show.
This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, Show 12.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
Hey everyone, this is Josh Dorkin with the BiggerPockets Podcast, Show 12. With me today, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Brandon Turner. What is happening, Brandon?
Show 12. That's incredible. We're getting pretty far on this thing. That's cool.
I'm shocked we haven't killed each other by now.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is indeed. No, it's going well, man. 12 shows is great. The first 11 were really good. I think we've come a long way. So certainly excited to knock out yet another. So this one is this is another good show as always. We're exploring a topic we haven't really gotten into very much. The topic of
wholesaling.
Wholesaling. Yay. Hey, I want to be a wholesaler, Brandon.
Like everybody wants to be a wholesaler. That's like the most popular thing in the world because everyone thinks it's really easy and it's free.
It's free. You don't need any money or time, and all you have to do is just say, I'm a wholesaler, and suddenly you're going to make $5,000-$10,000 a property without doing any work. Isn't that right? That's
completely right. And you can actually do it while on the beach in the Bahamas.
I once wholesaled a property on the beach in the Bahamas. In fact, I didn't even turn on my computer. I literally just got to the beach, sat down, and suddenly blinked my eyes, and I had $10K in my bank account. It was awesome.
That's pretty incredible.
Yes, it is. Well, as anyone who is listening probably knows, that is just not true. And frankly, it's not as easy as everybody says it is. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So yeah, it's a good topic because there's a lot of people who want to be wholesalers. And the person that we've got for today's show, Sharon Vornholt, is she's been doing this for a while, and she's pretty savvy at wholesaling. She's also savvy at some of the skills you need to do well at wholesaling. But anyway, we'll get into all that. Let's first get into today's quick tip.
Quick tip. We have a terrible. Wow, that's terrible.
We were supposed to get somebody to do a jingle or something.
Yeah, we'll have to get on Fiverr and find someone.
For sure. All right. So for today's quick tip, we want to let you know that you should go out and add a photo to your profile. Why should we be adding photos to our profiles, Brandon?
Because if you have a profile without a photo on it, it's a man holding a dollar sign, and I see that 1,000 times a day. And frankly, I'm tired of the man with the dollar sign. So make a nice little picture. And as an added benefit, besides my enjoyment, you also interact with people 1,000 times better on the site. When you're on the forums, if you have a picture, people are way more likely to talk to you, to give you advice, to help you out, and to make deals happen.
Yeah. Well, it shows that you're going to put the time in to the site, and that you're invested in the site, and that you care, and that you're a real person. I think people have a hard time identifying real people when they just see some blank generic avatar. So by putting up your personal photo, it makes it easier for them to relate to you. So anyway, that's today's quick tip. Get up your personal get up your it's a tongue twister, isn't it? Get your personal profile photo up, and make sure you've got a nice headshot picture of your face so we can all see you. And with that, let's get on to the show. So Sharon began investing in real estate in the Louisville, Kentucky area back in 1998. And while she's She's actually been a rehabber and buy and hold investor in her previous life. But her primary, I'm having a hard time today. Her primary area of focus is definitely wholesaling now. Sharon is a regular contributor on the BiggerPockets blog, and she's an avid blogger on her own site, the Louisville Gals Real Estate Blog.com. Not to be confused with the Louisville Gals Real Estate Blog.com, because if you lived here in Colorado in the area called Louisville, you would call it that. But of course, down in Kentucky, they've got a whole different way of saying it. Anyhow, with that, let's just welcome her to the show. Sharon, nice to have you.
Hey, Josh, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. All right, so let's just jump right into this thing. You are a marketing, you're somewhat of a marketing expert, and certainly well known around BiggerPockets and elsewhere as a savvy wholesaler. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate. What's your story? What's your background?
Well, I started out, as a lot of people know, in the home inspection business in 1991. And as a result of that business, I became friends with a number of realtors. And one of those realtors in particular took me to my first RIA meeting, long around 1998. And I got absolutely hooked on real estate investing. So I kept that home inspection business open until 2008. And I invested all of those years, about 10 years, while I had the home inspection business. And in 2008, I closed that business and started investing full time.
Okay. So you got so hooked that you said, I don't want to inspect properties anymore as a hired gun. I'm going to do it on my own for myself. Mm-hmm. Maybe really quickly, we could talk about that inspection process and the transition. Do you find that having that background is an asset? I would assume the answer is yes. But where does it help you maybe rise above what other people do in their investing, just having that skill set?
Well, I think it's important that you know the basics of the property. Now, bear in mind, I was the owner of the home inspection business, and I had hired inspectors. But I still went to all the trainings, got the certifications, and those sorts of things, even though I was not the person crawling under the house. I had to know if they were doing a good job. So when I started looking at properties, I had a big advantage in that I could look at a panel box and tell, gee, it's really, really small, or, it has fuses. I knew what to look for with structural problems and those sorts of things. So it was a big plus, I would say.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, as I mentioned, I guess your focus, we would say, is wholesaling. Maybe you can tell folks, what exactly is wholesaling?
Well, I think of wholesaling or wholesaler as being kind of a transaction coordinator. Like we talked about before, one of my strengths is marketing. I do a lot of marketing and especially a lot of direct mail. So initially, I was doing rehabbing, and I was a buy and hold landlord. And long around 2008, about the time I started investing full time, the houses here started staying on the market a long time. And that's when I started thinking maybe I need to do something else. So I got into wholesaling almost by accident. It wasn't something I started out doing. It was only after, I wanted to let the rehabbing go for a while. And I found out that I didn't like being a landlord. So that was where I ended up in wholesaling. And by that time, I'd made a lot of contacts with other rehabbers and landlords and those sorts of things. So
you started with the buy and holds and the rehabbing, and just naturally it kind of brought you over into this wholesaling space then.
It kind of backwards, actually. Most people probably start the other way, but yes, I did that. And to be truthful about, in the beginning, I had a hard time wrapping my mind around wholesaling and making offers on a lot of houses and cash offers. So I guess it maybe was not the natural way that most people would have done it.
Right. Okay.
So when you first got started, Sharon, I guess what did your first few deals look like? I mean, not necessarily like the landlording part of things, but when you started wholesaling, how did that come about? What was your first deal?
Well, as I said, I was just doing marketing, and a property came up when I had decided that I was going to try to wholesale it that was just actually a perfect candidate. And I just simply called it, I was a regular little 3-bedroom house that was, I'd say, lower, maybe blue collar, lower end bread and butter type of house. And I just called up some investors in my group and I sold it. And it was just worked out easy for me because I had been in that arena for a while. So from my perspective at that point in time, wholesaling was pretty easy.
Gotcha. So you get this, you find this deal and you just started calling people and suddenly it was sold. How does that process work?
I have for a long time kind of simultaneously built a list of contacts. The easiest way people can really do that is through their RIA group. If you can get a list of people that belong and get their emails, then those are people that have an interest in buying real estate. Once you have been in your RIA group for a while, then you're going to figure out who the real players are, who the top 5 or 6 or 7 cash buyers are. So I built my list initially straight out of my RIA group. Anytime I wouldn't have a house sold in a week or so, then I would put it on BiggerPockets and I would put it on Craigslist. And I've gotten a couple of good buyers from BiggerPockets. That's something everybody should realize. It was, I'd say, like an accident.
That's awesome. Hey, we love it. We love it. That's great. That's great. Cool. Okay. So you've got these opportunities and you just start reaching out to folks, and since you're finding good deals, they're jumping on it. That's pretty much the basics of the wholesaling game, right?
It is, but it's about relationships and knowing who the people in your sphere are, who the cash buyers are. And I will say to people, you don't always know who the cash buyers are. One of the buyers in particular that came from BiggerPockets was a guy, 50-ish kind of guy, who had retired from his corporate job, and he had a great big old 401k, and he had his house paid off. So he was able to just simply go to closing and write a check from his equity line of credit. So you might be surprised at the people that are actually cash buyers. You might not realize that they're cash buyers.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of times I think people try to build their list by some weird, I don't know, you have to hire some company to bring you cash buyers. You have to pay for a list of 1,000 people online. So I think that's awesome advice, to just go to a RIA and find out who the big players are. I think that's probably one of the biggest values in a RIA is not so much the education you're going to get, even that might be great, but it's the connections you make and find out who's actually doing the deals. I think that's where the real value is. So, yeah, very cool. So Sharon, what does your business look like now then? Are you still doing the same thing? Has it changed over the years? I know you're still wholesaling, but what does it look like now?
Well, it looks different, as you grow. I think one of the hardest things for me was to try to outsource some of the things, outsource some of the direct mail. And once you can do that, it enables you to stay on track a little bit better. I also continue to network to grow my buyers list, and I think it's important that people know that you have to nurture that buyers list. You have to let them know that they're important to you, and it's a great day when you have buyers call you and say, hey, do you have anything? You know then that you've got a really responsive list. But I pretty much do the same things. I market for deals. It's just that my exit strategy has changed. Okay. There is one other place that you can find cash buyers that I would encourage people to do too, and that is to go onto your local tax assessor site. In my area, it costs about $25 a month, and you can pull up any street or adjacent streets to your property and start looking on there to see who has bought multiple properties.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And you can find out pretty quickly because a lot of landlords work in areas, and you can just go through there, and if you see Brandon Turner's name on 5 or 6 properties, he's an investor and he likes that area. So that's a pretty low cost way to scope out buyers for your list too.
Okay, so generally you would recommend then when you're wholesaling, you're not going to be selling to you're not going to be selling to homeowners. You're probably going to be selling to investors, correct?
Always to investors. My end buyer is always an investor, and it's always a cash buyer of some sort. They're never going to get a mortgage. Now, they may work with an investor-friendly bank that closes in 7 to 10 days, but that is still a cash buyer in a wholesaler's mind.
Okay. Well, let's go back a little bit and go a little more basic. Like you said, wholesaling is sometimes hard to wrap your head around. I know it took me a long time. I think you said it took you a long time. Let's just walk through the whole process beginning to end then. So the very first thing you do is what? Marketing?
Is marketing. You market, and some people use banded signs. I don't use those anymore. My primary source of leads is direct mail, and then I think that you should have a website that is a lead capture website where people can put in their information. So once you get the lead, then I will look at the house, and when I make an offer and get an accepted offer on the contract, it's always in my contract that I'm going to put a lockbox on the house, because all my properties are vacant. They're always vacant, and they usually need a lot of work. So I will have a lockbox on that property. I try to buy myself a little bit longer time period to close if I can. Some people say they'll close everything in 7 days, and I have closed in 7 days. In reality, it's kind of tough to close in 7 days. Yeah. It takes people a little bit longer than that. But in my area, most people don't have any problem with closing. If you say, I'm going to put 30 days in the contract, or if you think it's going to be tough to sell, you might even put in 45 days. But you can tell them that my goal is to close it in 2 weeks. I hope to have a buyer in a couple weeks, and then we can just be done. So once I have it under contract, then for investors that I have worked with and investors that I know, I will simply, if it's someone that I know buys in that identical area, I'll just make a phone call or two. I call them my A buyers. They're the phone call buyers. And then if I'll give them a 24, no more than 48 hours head start, because investors are notorious for just hanging out at Starbucks and, being late to go look at a house. But then I will just put it out to my list, which is everybody. And once again, if I know them, I will give them the lockbox code. I don't give out a lockbox code from someone on Craigslist or someone that I don't know, because I don't want them to come back later that night and take the copper out of the property. Yep. So those people I meet, and the other reason I meet those people is I want to talk to them and see if they're really cash buyers. Are they really somebody that I want to nurture on my list, or are they just kind of out looking at houses and they're not really investors? But I kind of want to vet them.
Okay. So let's say you got a house under contract then, and you use direct mail, you found some really motivated sellers, and now those motivated sellers, those are people, right? You don't do this with bank repos, or do you?
I don't do that, but you can do that. The bank will always want you to use their title company, and that's fine. But you can, or they will always want to prepare the paperwork. I should put it that way. But in most cases, then you can have that paperwork sent over. In my area, we use closing attorneys. Some areas use title companies. But in my particular case, the attorney here closes those bank-owned deals all the time with a double closing.
Okay. And I think we'll talk about double closing hopefully a little bit later. But so you find you got this, you find the buyer. You found a buyer now. Somebody from your RIA says, yeah, I like the deal. It's great. So how do you get paid then? What happens?
Well, in most cases, I do a double closing. It costs me about $350 more than if I signed the contract. I have assigned contracts, but I like to double close.
So what's the difference then?
The difference is that I've got to if you do a double close, then your seller, who you have negotiated a great deal with, will not know what you have resold it for. If you have someone to come into a closing and close on the deal as an assignment, they've got to agree to give you a check on the side or separately, or you have to get paid out of that closing, in which case the your seller is going to know how much you've made. And you can imagine they get upset sometimes. If you've made $8,000 or $10,000, then they're going to be upset, about that. So for me, I just like to double close. It's just cleaner.
Hey, Sharon, so for those people who, I think this is one of the things that we will see the most confusion about. And, I think you're doing a pretty good job of explaining it, but, let's just to kind of reiterate the point, then there's two ways we can close, correct?
Right. The first way is that you write up an assignment. It's in my area, it's a simple addendum to the contract. You've got your contract, and then you say, I'm going to assign all my rights to the other person for this amount of money. It's real simple. It's just another piece of paper.
Okay.
Now, with the double closing, let's say that I buy the house from Josh, and I am the wholesaler, and I'm going to sell it to Brandon. I tell Brandon to come at 2 o'clock, and I tell Josh to come at 2:15, and they are in two separate closing rooms. We actually go in and sign the paperwork on that. It's called the B2C, or the second closing. And then bear in mind, this is an investor, and he knows I'm doing a double closing. He knows I'm using his funds to close the first deal.
Sure.
Then I walk into the other room. We sign the paperwork, close that deal. And since you always have to bring certified funds to a closing. So just to be clear, the A to B closing is where I buy the house from my seller. The B to C closing is where I sell it to my buyer. So we're going to close the B to C closing with his certified funds, so we know the money is there. He knows I'm doing a double closing. Then I walk into the other room and sign the paperwork with my seller. And then the closing attorney goes off and cuts all the checks. I shake hands with the seller, and then I go back into the other room and thank my buyer for, the transaction.
Okay. And in this case, then on the double, do you actually own the property? You actually hold the property for X amount of time?
Yeah, for 5 minutes, I actually take title.
Okay.
People have varying opinions about that, and there are some investors that claim that Brandon would give them a $10,000 check and just let them go show up at closing and hope it closes. I don't personally know a single person that would do that. But, some people it'll work, and I think people are a lot more comfortable if they're going to just be giving you $2,000 or $3,000. If you've got a big house and maybe a $10,000 or more payday, it's going to be a difference, in how they want to handle that.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think that definitely clears it up, and I think anyone listening who would probably have a better idea. So that's great. I definitely appreciate that. Hey, let's kind of. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, real quick. We'll also include a few links to some articles on the show notes at about that. So that's at biggerpockets.com/show12. So we'll have some articles. I know, Sharon, you've written some really good stuff in the past on double closings and why you do that. So we'll make sure we link to all that. So if people do want more information, again, this is kind of a little bit more complicated of a transaction. We'll have some more links there. So.
Great. Well, I was going to jump before I was rudely interrupted by that show plug. I was going to jump over to the topic of direct mail, because I think it's one of those things, again, that you're pretty good at, and a lot of people may not fully understand. So, direct mail, let's go to the real basics. How exactly does direct mail work?
Well, direct mail has 4 major components: the direct mail piece, the message that's on that mail piece, the list, and the mailing campaign. So there's 4 parts to each one. The first part is the first 2 parts would be the direct mail piece. Are you going to send a letter, or are you going to send a postcard? The message on that mail piece, and it will change because the message you give to a probate or a pre-foreclosure is very much different than what you give to an absentee owner. So that's what I mean about the message is going to change. Then you have your list. You can get your list from various sources. And I personally have gotten my absentee owner list from ListSource and places like that. Some of the postcard companies will also go through the list companies and get your list. When I first started out, I got my first absentee owner list from the PVA, from the tax assessor site. The problem with that list was I couldn't put any filters in the list except to exclude zip codes. For instance, I couldn't say I only want houses with 50% equity. That is the real bonus for getting a list from a place like ListSource. There, like I said, there's other companies. That just happens to be the one I'm familiar with. So you get your list, and then you set up your direct mail campaigns. Now, you can save all of this stuff in the computer, but I'm a big proponent of putting it up on the wall. You know, if you're going to mail on the 1st of every month, then I think you need a great big wall calendar, and you put absentee owner mailing, you know, down when you want it to go out, and then you back up from there and you put your print dates or whatever you have. Or if you're calling a mailing service, put it on a calendar, get it scheduled, and then it will go out like clockwork, because it's all about the repetition.
Gotcha. No, that's great. And you had mentioned probates and pre-foreclosures. So, you know, ultimately, when you send direct mail, you're going to select kind of the target that you're most interested in, right? So, you know, be it probates, you know, whatever you think is you know, you can set up various different types of campaigns. What's your favorite?
My two favorites are absentee owners and probates. Absentee owners may take a while to become motivated, but almost all of them will become motivated to sell at some point in time. And I only mail to absentee owners out of state. And that's because I live in Kentucky, and Kentucky is a relatively small state, so you can get anywhere in 3 hours just about here. Now, if I lived in California or Texas, I think what I tell people is you have to figure out how far away do you have to be to invoke the pain in the neck feature. I think it's about 3.5 hours, maybe a little bit more. People within that window will still drive in to take care of a property. But you get out 4, 5, 6 hours, then it becomes a real challenge unless you have a management group to manage your properties. So that's kind of my criteria. So I do out-of-state absentee owners and probates. By and large, the probates, the houses are always going to get sold out of the estate with few exceptions. So they're almost always very motivated.
Okay, so you send out these letters and you send them out repeatedly. I know you've said that a lot on the blog, and you just said earlier, you send them out over and over and over and over. That way, when the person becomes motivated, you're there. You're the first person they call. So what is a typical response rate look like when you're sending these things out? I mean, do you get 50% of people to call you, or 0.005% to call you?
Well, if you get somewhere, a low response rate generally in the industry is considered about 1% and average about 3%, and anything above that's good. But the thing with direct mail is that your actual purchases, your actual deals will go up with subsequent mailings. Your first mailing or two, you're going to get the people that say, take me off your list, or it's not showing up, but I've sold the house. You're going to get a lot of calls. But you're not, I don't want people to take this the wrong way and think you'll never get a deal from those first mailings, because you can. But the statistics say that after the first contact, you might get a 2% response. After the third contact, you're up to 6%. And then after the fifth contact, you will get 81% of your deals. Now, not calls, deals after that fifth contact. And it's somewhere after the first few mailings that most of the people will quit mailing. So I call it, you want to be the last man standing. If they've gotten your letter, and I've pulled up to places before and they've got my postcards or my letters all rubber banded together. They've kept every single one of them. And they'll say, well, I had a card here and I had a card here, but here, you did this every month. And that's why I get the call.
Nice. That's great. Can you just clarify really quick on that 81%? So if I'm to understand, the odds, you're talking about the odds of receiving a phone call from the person with whom you're sending the mailing to, correct?
No, what I'm saying is that, let's say you get 10 deals this year from direct mail. 81% of those deals will come about after the fifth contact.
Gotcha. Okay. I was a little confused, so that definitely makes sense.
Well, now, and here's an important point too. People will call sooner, and they may call and say, "Gee, I've got the house listed, so I don't really, I just wanted to let you know that." In which my response is always, "Well, if it's okay with you, I'm going to keep you on the list just in case that doesn't work out or your circumstances change. Is that okay with you?" And they always say yes. And several times a year, I get a call from someone who's had the house on the market a year, 15 months, 18 months, and then they are motivated. They just want to be done.
Gotcha. How much does somebody make wholesaling a deal, Sharon?
Well, I'll tell you what my goal is, and I don't always hit it, is $10,000.
Okay.
Now, some years ago, 3-4 years ago, probably 4, I was noticing that it was just coming up to be about $7,000. And then I started trying to raise that up a little bit, because maybe you'll make 12 on one and you might have to cut down to 8 or 7 on one because it doesn't, maybe it doesn't sell as quickly, or you find out it has a problem that you overlooked. But I like to leave some leeway in there. But the thing of it is, my end buyer is always going to get that deal the way he should get it, 70% of the ARV less repairs. If there's going to be anybody that gets cut on, doesn't make as much, it's going to be me. So that my challenge is to buy the property so that I get what I want to make out of it. And sometimes I don't make that much. Sometimes it's still a deal, and, who's going to turn down $3,000-$4,000?
Yeah. Sharon, you touched on something really important there, I think. A lot of people get into, they want to get into wholesaling because they believe that's the easiest way to get into real estate investing. And, whether or not you believe that or not, the fact is you have to get deals that are better than even house flippers can get. And I think Jay Scott said that once, I think on his podcast. He said how, actually Marty said that too at one time to me, that as a wholesaler, you have to find a deal that will give the investor profit and you profit. So you're like doubling the amount, the deal you get. Is that right?
Yeah, it is definitely harder if the rehabber finds the deal, then he doesn't have to, he can pay that person more. And I'm trying to find a balance here, because most of the homes that I buy need a lot of work, and the people know they need a lot of work. And there's a certain, way that there's a certain skill involved in even getting the deal. But in the end, like I said, my buyer, that's why they buy from me over and over again. They get the deal with the 70%. I work the formula, and I put in, what I call a fudge fund, a what if I don't, didn't find it originally or it shows up. But they buy from me time and time again because I give them good deals, and I don't try to fudge on their end. If I have to fudge on something, it's my fee that gets cut.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice. Hey, Sharon, what do you say in these letters? What do the mailings say? Obviously, I'm assuming they're going to differ based upon the different types that you're sending. But you had mentioned absentee owners and probates. Maybe you could you don't have to read your script, but kind of give us the essence of what you're talking about in there.
Well, I have about 4 or 5 letters that I kind of tweak these letters up. With the probate, I might start out, and there's different views on this, whether to acknowledge they have a loss or they don't have a loss. But the first question they're going to ask you is, how did you hear about me? So I like to just put it out there and say, I'm sorry for your loss. I understand that you're handling the estate. And then the next time I might say something like, I'm checking in to see if you've gotten started, if you might be interested in selling the property. And it kind of goes down to where I get, I'll say, well, you should be getting ready to finish the estate now. It's just kind of a natural progression. It's the same letter, but with the words changed. And with absentee owners, I don't vary too much from that letter. It's just you need to go over what their pain is. I have a house and I live 7,000 miles away, or hit upon maybe the different situations. If you're sending out a more generic letter, it might be, how can I help you with this situation? Are you an absentee owner? Have you inherited a house you don't want? Have you lost your job? Did you relocate and you've got 2 houses? So you have to hit upon the pain and the pain and the pleasure. What are the benefits that you can provide them so that they get rid of their pain, whatever that pain is.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome advice. So cool. So you get this. You find a motivated seller. You find out their pain. You got them through direct mail. All this. So what happens next? You're talking to them. Do you go and meet with them in person if you can? They, presumably they either call you with the number or they enter in some information on your website. But what happens next then?
Well, whenever possible, you meet with the person. Now, with absentee owners, unless they happen to be in town, they're probably going to give you a contact to go and look at the property. And I've done that many times. I've looked at the property. I've made an offer. They've accepted the offer. And I never meet this person. I talk to them on the phone, and all the documents are sent out, FedEx or UPS overnight. They sign the documents, and many times we've actually closed those easily in a week if I had a buyer on hand. But with probates, it's a very different conversation. You have to acknowledge that this is a tough time for them, and it is gut-wrenching for them to look at their mom's worldly possessions, which really are nothing. They have no monetary value, and it's gut-wrenching for them to have to dispose of them.
Oh, definitely.
So I always try to ask, whether it's an absentee owner or a probate, in addition to money, there's always something else they want. Maybe they need help cleaning out the house, or they've got back taxes, or they've got, I bought a house once that had a $3,000 lien from code enforcement on it. So I always try to find these things out, and they will usually tell you, what is your situation? You just keep asking better questions. And once they tell you, gosh, I don't have any money for closing, and I have a $3,000 lien on the house from the code officials, then your offer has to be $3,500 less than what it would have been, because you're going to offer to pay for those. Whenever you can just tell the seller what they are going to net out of the deal, then that's easier for them to understand than to understand all your figures with the closing costs and I'm going to pay this and that.
Oh, that's great. So how do you decide if it's worth actually pursuing? I'm assuming you talk to a lot of duds, a lot of deals that aren't going to work out. How do you decide?
Well, I talk to a lot of duds, and see, if you're a buy and hold landlord, like I know you are, Brandon, you've got some property. Yeah. You can do different things with deals that have less equity. You can maybe do a lease option scenario, or you can do something that a wholesaler can't do. Now, they often give you a price, and that's just a price. I'll even say, where did you get that price? Oh, I just thought it up, or the house down the street sold for this, question. and it's all. But I'll say, yeah, but I see that in the comps, but it's completely renovated. Yeah, see, they really know. But you can't blame them for throwing out a ridiculous price. You've got to try to bring them back into, I like to say, adjust their expectations. And it's a process. You can do it. I try to start the process on the phone. If I think I can turn it into a deal, then I'm going to start that process on the phone. Once I get out there to the property, then I'm going to continue that conversation, and I'm going to continue to just ask them questions. What you want to find out is, what is their motivation? Money is certainly always part of it, but it's not always money. They may need something else. They may need you to say, I will clean out this house that has 2 feet of stuff everywhere.
That's great. Cool. All right. Well, we probably should be wrapping this thing up pretty soon. So before we go, I do have one final question before we get to the final questions. I'm just curious. We touched on this a little bit earlier, and a lot of beginners want to do wholesaling. It's kind of like the guru choice today. It's like, oh, go get into wholesaling. It's the easy way. Doesn't take any money. I guess, what do you say about that?
Well, I think I made the same mistake that most investors make when they're brand new investors. I paid too much for the property. If you have bought the property and you've paid too much and you're going to be a landlord, you just got to kind of suck it up and figure it out, hope you can work out the rents. But if you pay way too much for a wholesale deal, you're going to be stuck. You may sell it, but you're probably not going to make any money. I think learning how to buy property is probably, or how to buy it for the right amount of money is probably one of the things that nobody knows in the beginning. So some people, wholesaling may be the way to go, and it's certainly a way you can get in with little or no cash, but it's possibly not the best strategy to start with, in that you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know what a good deal is.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely true. Hey, Sharon, what I guess then would you say would be your best piece of advice for new wholesalers, somebody who's just totally fresh off the boat, who doesn't really know too much about real estate investing, but has heard that wholesaling's great? How should they go about kind of getting into it?
Well, the best case scenario is that you can align yourself with a mentor, with an experienced real estate investor, and that, you can learn what a good deal is. I've had people call me with properties that didn't even know what the 70% formula was. They bought it $10,000 under retail, and they thought they had a great deal. So if you can find a mentor, and you can usually find someone at your RIA group, that's a great place. BiggerPockets is a great place to find somebody. You can go on there and say, I'm looking at buying my first property and I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And people will jump in and they will help. But I think education is the key. But there's also a certain amount of practice. You just have to go out and talk to people and make offers and get over that fear of dread that most people have. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and I think, bring up a great point on the mentor thing. A lot of folks think you have to go out and spend a lot of money to go get a mentor. And exactly as you said, I mean, if you go to your RIA, if you go to the local, your local group or your local meetup, I mean, you're sure to be running around with folks who are successful, who are doing business and doing deals. And frankly, there's a lot of people who are just happy to help you out and happy to mentor you. And so, I'm glad you mentioned that. And I do want to reiterate it, how that's really, at least in my opinion, that's the best way to find a mentor. Find successful people in your local area who are out and about doing it.
Yeah, because they know your area. And by and large, people, I've never had anybody turn me down. Now, when I first started in real estate, we had a mentoring group in our RIA group, which is something, I know why they stopped, because it was a lot of work, but it was the best thing, because they had a different investor come every week for 10 or 12 weeks, and it was the hour before the meeting. And maybe one week it was on filling out the paperwork. Then it was on the formula for the offers. And they had a natural progression on down to where they spoke about lease option, wholesaling. But it was one person for 1 week. And you left there at the end of that, and you had gotten so much education in an orderly manner. That's part of the problem too. You jump on and you learn about landlording, then you say, well, maybe I should learn about wholesaling. You don't always get the information at the right time or in the order that you need it.
Sure, yeah. For sure. Hey, so great advice on the RIA, and I think I think there really is a lot of value in going and in that personal person to person interaction. But overall, I guess, can you tell us in really, really quickly, if I'm going to jump in, I want to be a wholesaler. What are my first actionable steps to take?
Marketing. Marketing is your first thing. You have to have leads to ever have a hope of getting a deal. And anybody starting in real estate should plan on spending about 2 hours a day marketing. Now, maybe you don't do that every day. You might do it on Saturday in the evening, but you find your list, you get your mail piece going if you have to handwrite them or order them or whatever you do. But you have to market or you'll never have a deal.
Awesome. That's great. All right, so let's wrap this thing up with our 4 famous questions here at the end. Number 1, what is your favorite real estate book, Sharon?
Well, I have a lot, but probably the one that made me think about money differently the most was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Ooh, nice. There you go. We haven't heard that before.
That's a good one.
How about your favorite non-real estate business book?
The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. It's a great book. I've written all over the book. It's little short chapters, and everybody should read that.
Nice.
That's good. Okay. I never heard of that one.
No. How about hobbies? Surely real estate is not the only thing that you do. I know you like to write, but and anything beyond that?
Oh yeah, I love to travel. I don't get to travel as much as Brandon. Love to go to the beach. I like art fairs.
She just called you out, Brandon.
Brandon, the world traveler. So travel to any beach, art fairs. I'm an avid reader, and I have a granddaughter who's 12 that I spend a lot of time with.
Oh, great. Cool. And Brandon, I know you've got the big final question here for Sharon.
All right, so Sharon, there's a lot of wannabe wholesalers out there, probably more than any other field of real estate. I mean, people that come and go every day on BiggerPockets who say, I want to be a wholesaler, and then never do it. So what makes them stand out? The ones who actually do succeed, and the ones that are making it happen, and those who don't.
They just don't quit. That's the first thing. When things get rough, as they inevitably do, they don't quit. They are lifelong learners. That is vital. And they change with the market. When I was in my RIA group about a week ago, there was a fellow there who's been investing since, probably 45 or 50 years. And he said, I sold and bought real estate when interest rates were 17%, and I've sold and bought real estate when interest rates were, where they are now. You just have to change what you do and change your marketing, but as the market change. And he's very successsaling.
Oh, that's great. Great advice. I want to actually pick back up upon Brandon's question here for a quick second. Wholesaling really is the field where, I can't tell you how many countless, tens of thousands of people we've probably seen over the years say, hey, I'm going to be a wholesaler. Cool. And then they're gone within months. How can those guys, beyond just, having that sheer perseverance, how can those guys make it? I mean, how do we stop these guys from falling off? How do we get more of these people to be successful and to actually make it? And is there anything that we all can do other than what we're doing now, which is writing, trying to educate people, trying to give them the tools?
I think it's all in the learning and having a mentor. Because I think for so many people, they jump in, they think it's going to be easy. They think it's going to be one way or the other. And when they get some houses under contract, they didn't buy them cheap enough, they can't sell them, whatever happens, they just get frustrated instead of saying, okay, that didn't work out. Now let's sit back and dissect this whole thing and see what happened. Okay, I paid too much, or I didn't have a buyer's list. I think if you look at it from that perspective and then you just go next, but it's in the learning. If you go out there and you think you're not going to have to learn and change and learn every day, you're just sadly mistaken.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I tell you, I was going to say really quickly that is one of the reasons that I started BiggerPockets. I started the site because I needed a place to go. I needed a place to learn. I needed to find, I needed mentors. I needed help. And so I created the site because I personally, for my own real estate investing, needed a place. And so that's a really, really good point. I mean, having the ability and knowing that you need help, not just quitting, but, going out and having the guts to say, I don't know it. I don't know. What do I do?
Well, one of the hardest things to do, I think, for anybody is to come onto BiggerPockets and say on the forum and say, boy, I really screwed this up.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? But you have to be willing to do that. And that's another benefit of belonging to your local RIA group and actually meeting people, that you can call them up and say, gee, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, or what am I doing? And they will just flat out tell you.
Yeah.
And it's just great. But your site has provided education, certainly to me. And because even as many years as I've been doing it, I don't proclaim to know everything, or, I'm the first one to tell you it's going to change tomorrow or next week.
Right. Yeah. Well, I tell you, anybody who claims to know everything is full of crap. Stay away from them.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
All right, Sharon. Well, listen, this is, actually, you know what, Brandon, didn't you have something you were going to add? Sorry.
Yeah. Real quick. I just wanted to add, something you said earlier about finding mentors and local guys, like just from a personal standpoint, I would love, personally, I'm a cash buyer. I can close in 2 weeks and I don't have time to find deals. I struggle finding time. So find a guy like me in your area who can close in a couple weeks and just say, hey, what kind of deals do you want? What are you looking for? I mean, if somebody in my town came up to me and asked me that, I'd say, yeah, I want this, and this, and here's how you're going to go find it. And I would walk them step by step through that process. And there's nobody around to do that. So out of the millions of wholesalers that are out there, do that.
Yeah, and boy, you should have somebody like that, because one of the first things I like to do is I ask the person, where do you buy? What price range do you buy? Where won't you buy? And I get that criteria down, which is how they get the call. Yep. You know, for me, you're a dream person. I want to have a Brandon on my list and to call.
And I want to have a Sharon, but
it's a love connection. All right. Well, Sharon, lots of really, really good stuff, valuable information, lots of really great tips. I think this will help a lot of the new guys out. So I definitely want to thank you. We really appreciate having you. Sorry that this is a little bit shorter than usual, but thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I loved it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sharon.
All right, everybody. That was our show with wholesaler and expert marketer Sharon Vornholt. Of course, you can review all the show notes as well as find links to all the stuff we talked about over on biggerpockets.com/show12. Before we go, I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening to the show. As always, we're now up to 166 5-star reviews in iTunes. So thank you guys very much. Thanks everybody who's left us a review. If you haven't already done so, please take 2 minutes, go over and leave us one. It definitely helps us out. And finally, please be sure to come and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/biggerpockets. As always, we'll see you back on the site at biggerpockets.com. If you haven't been around in a while, please jump in, get involved in the conversations, welcome some new members, get engaged in any of the activity that's happening on site. It'll definitely help you expand your network and grow. So hopefully you'll do that. And that's about it. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. I'm Josh Dorkin with my partner here, Brandon Turner. See you later.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.